Welcome to Fiery Discourse, your podcast of media featuring dragonesses, female dinosaurs, and other similar saurians and scalies. I'm your host, Ludmillanon, and with me are my co-hosts, Angron, Mathmachine, LuckyEevee, Stryker, Shark, and Jordan. Today is our 67th episode, and we're discussing the 1996 Blazing Dragons episode, The Age of Retention. So, let's get things started. Now, as you probably know, if you've listened to this podcast, and if you haven't, welcome. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about the cartoon Blazing Dragons, which was a very, very funny show, very underrated. It's a cult classic, and it is for a reason because it's definitely the kind of show that you could tell that it was way ahead of its time in a lot of ways. It is more reminiscent of something like Dave the Barbarian or Freakazoid, and it is just so, so funny. It really has like so many great lines, so many great characters, the setting, really, really a good time.
Oh, hell yeah. It also spawned a game later, which we'll get to as well
Eventually,
later.
yep. We definitely will.
But yeah, you are not having a case of deja vu. We are doing Blazing Dragons again.
Yep.
Third time's the charm.
The reason we're doing it again.
There is a reason, because let's just say some stuff is different here than last time.
Yep. What happened was Blazing Dragons was enough of a success to apparently get greenlit for a season 2. But that came at a little bit of a cost because the show was completely retooled. Apparently, the major changes was number 1, they got a new writing team. Number 2, the animation style completely changed. And perhaps the biggest and most, basically the change that is the most detrimental to the show as a whole. The runtime of it went from 22 minutes to 11 minutes, which it doesn't seem like much, but when you actually watch it, it is so noticeable. Because you're literally trying to fit the same story in half the runtime, and something's going to definitely give with it.
Yep.
Spoiler alert, I've seen cartoons that have worked transitioning from 11-minute episodes to 22-minute episodes. I have never seen one that works doing the opposite, where it goes from the long format to the short format, and that holds here.
Yes, absolutely right.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, this show...
having a season of a show go from 26 to 13 episodes is bad? Oh, you haven't seen anything when it happens to the episodes.
Yep, the length of it, definitely. And the theme song remains the same from the first season, which is good. But then again, it's also worrying because now at the much shorter runtime, it means that you're wasting nearly a minute just on the opening theme song, which, again, every second counts with this.
And what's interesting about it is that the intro actually uses the art style from the first season. And when you get through it, you will see the drastic changes.
Yeah,
it's not a good idea to use your old animation style and your old intro for your new animation style, because it's rather jarring when you actually get into the show.
Yep.
Very much so, especially because from the opening theme song, you think like, oh, it's going to be exactly like season 1. That's great. And then the actual episode starts, and here's where the interesting things happen. Because the episode itself begins with the Knights of the Square Table as King Allflame lets out some royal decrees, and let's just not beat around the bush or anything. Let's get right to the animation style, which is very, very simplistic, especially compared to the first season, which it wasn't like fantastic animation, but it was really good. It was good animation. This, to me, what this reminded me of was Flash animation, but we're talking early Flash animation. We're talking stuff like, with motion tweening and things like that. This feels very flat and very lifeless, whereas the first season had an animation style that felt more vibrant. It felt more lived in. This just feels like, oh, I'm watching a cartoon.
I've called it Proto Flash because this is before Flash animation was really a thing, and this was probably still hand drawn, but it's using that same simplistic style that Flash is notorious for.
Exactly. And as a whole, a lot of the designs were changed as well. They were simplified and edited, especially in the case of Princess Flame. She looks pretty different compared to season 1, but we'll get to her when she actually appears in this episode, so stay tuned for that.
Yep.
So now the episode itself, what happens next is the two-headed jester arrives and trips on the rug, causing a live chicken to fall onto the square table. There's a funny gag with Loungelot saying it's a trifle undercooked, and then he proceeds to roast it with this flame.
Barbecue, anyone?
For barbecue?
Exactly. And while the king basically talks about how they should not work in conditions that cause injury, Loungelot sets the jester ablaze. King Allflame continues to talk, where, as in another funny gag, Sir Flame carves the bird into a statue of himself. And again, the thing about this season, about this episode in particular, it has the same amount of humor. It still is really funny, but it just doesn't click because it feels underbaked.
And Rush, like, they have to make a joke like every 5 seconds, and they don't really give you a chance to get in.
Exactly, to absorb it. Whereas the original one would have like running gags, and they'd let it breathe a little bit.
And honestly, the jokes themselves don't really absorb all that much.
Yeah,
they're not terrible, but they certainly could. They're not like what the original one was. I mean, there are a few that absolutely do match the season 1 level of humor, but otherwise that's a no.
Definitely not.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest issue you're going to notice throughout this when they change the format, is that because they're on such a time constraint, they have cut out anything they thought wasn't necessary, including like breathing room through jokes or just any relevant plot thing that they thought that they could remove to make it work. Because I am absolutely certain a bunch of these episodes were written as 22-minute episodes, and then the network came back and said, "No, we're changing it to 11-minute format," and they had to scramble to make these work in any way they could.
Oh, definitely. You can definitely tell.
It really feels like that.
Yeah, they had to make a lot of cuts, a lot of cuts.
Oh yeah.
So King Allflame. Meanwhile, Sir Flame is then jousting with one of the knights in the background for the wishbone while knocking the jester out of the window and behind a horse. Meanwhile, the knights are then all interrupted by a drilling sound, as I think for the first time in this show, King Allflame actually says blazing dragons, and they use that a lot in this episode and probably in the rest of the season as like a
2 times total. But yeah.
It's like
the
reason they had
it this time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Basically, I think the reason they did it was basically to remind kids that, oh yeah, this is the name of the show, so we gotta remind kids what show they're watching because they're stupid. Which,
and we remind them of the name of the show by using the show's name as a curse word.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think it's really like to say, hey, it's the name of the show is Blazing Dragons. I think it's just more like people were like, oh, hey. I think it's just like a little joke or something that they did, which it's not bad, that's for sure. But it's just pretty surprising, all things considered.
Yes, definitely. So what happens is Flicker then tells them that construction is going on in a nearby castle, which does not appear to be Sir Joffrey's, which is very interesting. It's like everything with the first season, like with the actual plot line of the evil humans trying to invade the kingdom. It's there, but it's not there. It's like, I haven't seen it, so I don't know if they did like a big season finale where, they got rid of Sir Joffrey for good or something like that. But if they did, it's very, very strange. Going from like a random episode in season 1 to a random episode in season 2. It really does feel like a brand new show. And as we've mentioned before, and I'll probably mention many times again, not for the better.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty weird. That's for sure.
Definitely. So
I don't know if this episode was like, if the series was episodic, where each episode was, you could watch any episode in any order, or if it had like some sort of time you have to follow per se.
Yeah, but it definitely is very weird. But here we actually get some comedy again as Queen Griddle shows up, dressed in a very, very tight bathing suit.
Oh, hell yeah.
The knights all say things like, ooh, it's ghastly, it's tacky, we should just get rid of it. And they're talking about the construction, but Queen Griddle thinks they're all talking about her. She literally turns red with rage, and she just tackles her husband and all the knights out of the window. And this actually made me laugh because it had a good setup, it had a good punchline, and I think what it is, partially, is also Queen Griddle's falsetto voice is still really funny.
It's slow enough that you can actually absorb it this time. Like it's not a 5-second joke. It takes a while to build up and
exactly.
This feels like the one joke they were like, no, we have to save this one. We have to make sure that this one is done in full.
I mean, they were not wrong to do that because it is the best joke of the episode.
Yep.
So if they had to choose it, they made the right choice there. But while they're in the mud, King Allflame decides that now would be a good time to confront whoever's in this castle, as well as bring gifts to them, which is a pretty good joke. Like how he instantly like changes on a dime from like, oh, we must confront these wrongdoers and give them gifts. Lancelot asks Flicker if he still has the fruitcakes from Christmas, and Flicker remarks he has 10 years worth of them, which does come back later on. I give him credit that this one-off gag, they did actually kind of develop it.
Also, I think he says we got 10 seasons worth, so there's a little fourth wall break there.
That is clever. If only we lived in a world where this show lasted 10 seasons and we were all like the first. If only. But what we got was still good. So we then cut to King Allflame knocking on the door as a large amount of smaller doors open and a human walks out. He claims that he is Duke Rudolph of Rudy's Romping Rollicking Toy Company. And his design is really weird, especially compared to how the humans looked for the first seasons. He has I don't know how I could describe him. The best way I think I could is think of like a stereotypical beatnik type, and you're halfway there.
He looks like he's from the modern day, basically.
Yeah, it's very, very strange, especially compared to how the first season, all the humans in it were, humans that looked like, knights or from the past and that.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like a medieval version of what the Simpsons would typically have for the devil.
That is a good point. I did not think about that, but he does kind of look like that.
He does? Well, dang.
In a way, yeah, I can definitely kind of see
A
it.
pointed mustache and goatee.
Yeah, Ned Flanders.
Oh, gosh.
If only
Cannot say that now.
Flanders.
Thanks a lot.
If only it was Ned
as
Flanders.
kind as Flanders.
If only. But King Allflame brings some greetings as Sir Lancelot gives him a wagon full of the fruitcakes, which is so heavy that they clang onto the ground. Rudolph then basically just tries to run back in his castle to get back to work, but the king claims he's in violation of his new labor rules. There's a little brief political joke that actually got a pretty decent chuckle out of me. Rudolph goes, and he's like the stereotypical Germanic mad scientist type. He goes, "Oh, you're with the Labor Party. I thought you were conservatives." Which,
Oh, gosh.
I will say that. That's at least one little political joke that got a little smirk out of me. It definitely it worked out well, But all of the dragons enter the castle as Lancelot demands drinks and biscuits with his tour. I like how Flicker literally has to push him along in the wagon as they go in. Because he's too busy just making all these ridiculous demands.
Yep.
Also, you were mistaken. It wasn't biscuits Lancelot was demanding. It was bickies.
Oh my
sorry.
gosh.
That was the same thing, but yeah. Okay. So I guess I'll change that in my notes, but all right.
That was a really weird recurring joke in the episode that they kept referring to them as bickies.
I don't know if it's British, ain't it? Sure. I don't know if that's slang or not. I would know. I'm not British. I'm sure none of you guys are. So
we are not SOB.
I mean, all Americans once started as British, but
true. That is a very good thing. But nope.
Don't mean we retain.
We are not SOB. And if you don't know what that is, watch our episode on the other Blazing Dragons episode.
Yep.
But finally, getting back to this one. All the dragons find themselves inside of a factory where a bunch of workers are in unsafe conditions, and King Allflame is distressed by this. Rudolph claims that he's a simple toy maker and needs guidance. Flicker basically finds a giant piece of metal, and he asks what kind of toy this could be, but Rudolph basically angrily swats it away before saying it needs to go under safety inspection. And again, this is where the poor pacing really hurts the episode. This is probably the second biggest aspect of it, the largest being later on when we get to it, which is because they just literally rush right through it. You could actually show more of the factory. You could show like more of why the dragons would think this is a toy factory when it clearly is just making like metal work and that. And that's something else that we'll bring up about later on with how the dragons act in this compared to how they acted in the first season, because there is pretty much a bit of a difference. But they go into another room where Rudolph claims that the fruitcake could work as new bricks. Flicker notices a locked room guarded by piranhas and a giant "No Dragon" sign on it. causing him to basically confront Rudolph about it. But Rudolph brushes this off yet again. And it's here we get another gag that actually made me laugh. Flicker basically declares that Rudolph is going to try and butter them up with cheap flattery, and Loungelot says, "Oh, we would never fall for such a thing." And then Rudolph instantly says, "I need a group of top strategic minds willing to work for large wages and free bickies." And then all the dragons are excited and they just run right into the room. That is just something that is perfect setup, perfect punchline, and again, it actually did make me, that moment also got a good laugh out of me.
Yep.
Yeah, again, setup and payoff, not something instant.
Yep, basically. And
it's a simple joke, but it works.
Yeah,
definitely. And of course, all the knights, except of course her Flicker, are all eagerly wanting to work for him as Rudolph puts him in the refreshment room before letting out an evil laugh. We then cut to Lancelot claiming he is an ASS, an Associate Strategic Supervisor, which...
much ass.
Yep, and basically it literally is the same joke as the SOB one from the other episode, and if there were... I don't know if there's like a running gag throughout the entire series, and if it was, that would make sense, but because we don't know, it feels like they're just kind of going over old territory.
Maybe, yeah. I can definitely see that.
Yep. And of course, Flicker basically mentions how strange it is that they're working for him and they don't even know what Rudolph is making, but Lancelot tells him, "Don't be so self-absorbed," in another cute moment. And Flicker then sees Rudolph laughing evilly, yet again. And it's then we got to the moment that really just confused me. I actually had to stop and rewind it to make sure I was seeing it right. We then cut to King Allflame, dressed in a Santa Claus outfit, as he is sobbing and he is surrounded by the workers. And it's this moment I actually had to pause it and actually had to go back to make sure what I saw was right. And imagine if you're just flicking if you're just going through the channels on TV and you stop at that moment. A dragon dressed as Santa Claus having a bunch of like balding, men sit on his lap.
Yeah.
That is very, very weird sight.
A bunch of bald
moment,
serfs is being
more
like,
than-
Go ahead, Matt.
This moment, more than any others, it absolutely felt like something got cut, something was lost in translation, and we just jumped to the joke or the punchline of the joke without any building or setup.
Yeah, because the crumbles of what originally was a good meal.
Yeah, exactly. And Flicker asks him what the matter is, and it turns out the king is crying because of the serf's love of onions, and he's been made Chief Onion Steward, and he has to address all their worries. Now, we know that Shrek would definitely approve of this, but again, it's something that, like Shark said, it just feels so undercooked because it comes completely out of nowhere, and this goes absolutely nowhere also, because after this, we never see it again. We don't even see what happens to the other knights after this. It really feels like, again, and we don't want to just keep harping on the same point over and over a million times, but it really is a noticeable thing.
We'll all happily.
Yeah, the fact that we only see 2 of the dragons, except of everyone, clearly feels like originally the 22-minute episode had all of them, but it got cut to 11 minutes. They have to cut them out, and we were left with this.
Exactly. But we do have one joke that I liked where the king claims he's well prepared for this because of his marriage to Queen Griddle, which, again, that got a smirk out of me. And then we instantly cut to all of the knights being fast asleep because it turns out Rudolph has been overworking them. And it's here where we finally get to see the dragoness, of course, we're going to talk about, Princess Flame. She shows up 6.5 minutes into what is a 10-minute episode, so kind of late, especially compared to last times, because last week was another thing, but last time we did Blazing Dragons, she was the focus of it right from the start. But now it's in better time than any to talk about Princess Flame's design here.
Yeah.
Which, her design, I will say this, it's one of the better redesigns in a way. I do have to admit, compared to some of the other ones, they actually seem to take a little more care with her. One thing I did notice is that the colors seem a little more faded and washed out, especially with the hair.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. It also doesn't help that, again, she's got hair, which...
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I don't like
her
the haircut.
first iteration,
that
she
they
just
gave her.
often wore the cowl, so you never saw it.
Yeah. But here, her
Fair,
hair is
but-
actually sticking out, so it's very noticeable.
Yeah.
So she
That's
has a
fair, I
shorter
suppose.
snout too.
Yep. But like I say, I feel like her design is one of the better redesigns, but I will say that, like most things, I feel like the first season look is a little bit better, and we'll talk
Yeah.
more about that when we get to the Dragoness Scale, our thoughts on her, but spoilers, this is going to be a very interesting Dragoness Scale with a lot of unique opinions.
Yep.
I don't think it's going to be like a train this week of like similar
Yep.
scores.
Yep.
But that's what the fun of it is. It turns out that Flicker surmises that Rudolph has deliberately kept them busy so that they don't wonder what Rudolph is doing in his basement. And despite everything we've said, despite the rushed tone, despite the jokes that don't go anywhere, despite the really weird and somewhat stiff animation, I have to admit, Flicker and Flame's relation is still a really fun one. I like what they did with it.
Yep.
You know, they
I
actually
agree.
kept it. They followed up on how they were in season 1, which is really nice. And like I said, they could have just done like, a complete reset of it. But the fact that it is kind of continuing after the first season, at least in that aspect, has to be admired.
That is very true.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But the two of... Oh, sorry, go ahead. I'm going to say, Shark? Sorry,
Oh, no, I was agreeing.
sorry. So yeah, the two of them go into Rudolph's castle and they walk down the stairs before it suddenly turns into a slide and sends them into a cage. Rudolph taunts them, and then he prepares to take Princess Flame hostage once his evil plan is complete. And
See something ironic here, especially compared to the last time we talked about Flame.
Yep.
yep, because in the other episode we talked about her, the entire bit was that she did not want to be a damsel in distress and wanted to have some more agency, and she turned out to be way better at it than the Knights of the Square Table ever could be.
Mm.
Yep.
And well,
her
in this
Flicker-
episode, they use her as a damsel in distress, and I think she gets something in the ballpark of 5 lines.
Yeah,
Yep.
and again, that is such a shame because I feel like this is where they made the most cuts because how rushed this is compared to the rest, it's like they had like maybe 5 more pages of material and they were forced to cut it down to like half. So
Yeah.
you can definitely tell at this point that they were grasping at straws basically to try and just finish this by any means necessary. There is a funny bit where after Rudolph tells his plan of using the machine to destroy Camelot and the rest of Europe, Flicker asks him why he's doing this, and Rudolph is just stunned for a minute before he just says,
Like-
"Oh, shut up, I'll think about it."
Hmm.
Fuck you, I
did
got
not
nothing.
think that far ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah, insight this guy truly does not have.
Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly.
I don't
I
know.
didn't think I'll go
Never
this
thought
far.
I'd get this far.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It,
I
it
don't
really
know. I
does
don't-
feel
didn't
like
think
a
I'd get this far.
plankton. It really does feel like a plankton scheme. It actually
Yeah.
does. And but yeah, with SpongeBob, I feel like it would work because Plankton has been shown to do it many times, and he's overconfident and that. Whereas this guy, we don't really know anything about him. We get like
Yep.
a couple of scenes of him laughing evilly, and then it just cuts to this. I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of his character development probably was the stuff that was cut out too, as well as the stuff with Flame.
Yep.
Flicker basically asks him, why doesn't he just, destroy Camelot and take over Europe already? It turns out Rudolph needs heat to run the boilers. He plans on using King Allflame and the Knights to do it.
All fire, yeah.
Yep. And it turns out that there's another good gag that I did like. Flicker claiming that, they would never be so stupid enough to do such a thing. Was then followed by the Knights instantly bursting into the room and saying, "Oh, we're ready to help you." Again, that's something that, again, it feels like, set up, juxtaposition, punchline. And it's perfect. It really, really does work. A giant boot then kicks all the other dragons into the machine. Rudolph enters and he sits on the throne, which is a literal toilet, which, that just came out of nowhere.
It's a literal porta potty. And apparently the device's name, I kid you not, is Behemoth Artillery Reinforced Raiding Yeoman, aka
Barry.
Barry.
Yep.
Which
Picked
does
the head
upset
from
me
the
because
toilet chair and said, I shall do that too.
that joke upsets me because if you're going to have a giant robot based around a toilet and a porta potty, why didn't you call it John?
No.
Very true. Very true. Wow. We are coming up with better jokes than these professional writers
It
are.
was
Wow.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had a
Uh,
whole joke around it being a toilet, and like
Yeah.
just they
And
went
even that just
through
comes
with
out
it.
of nowhere. It's just like, why is it like that? If they had like, more toilet themed stuff in his castle, it would make a little bit more sense. Instead, it just feels like a random thing for randomness' sake.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
he tells
most
the
of it's random. It's still funny for the most part, but
Yeah, it is, but it
It
feels
is.
like it's funny because it's random. Basically, it feels like it feels rushed. It doesn't feel earned in a way.
The
Oh,
I can
issue
see
here
why.
is that with season 1, the jokes made sense in the context of everything. They were built up in the episode itself, whereas here it just seems like, oh hey, we're just pulling random shit out of our ass. Let's hope it gets a chuckle.
Definitely that. And
Yep.
the other thing I noticed is after Rudolph tells the dragons to heat the boilers, otherwise Princess Flame will perish, the knights immediately just run to the boilers and they do so without any resistance. And it's here again that I want to bring up something. The knights and King Allflame, they seem to be way, way dumber in this season compared to the first one. It's kind of like how Cosmo was in the first season of Fairly Odd Parents compared to how he was around the end of Fairly Odd Parents. It's not that bad, but it is very, very similar in that they were never like the brightest bunch. They weren't outright idiots like this. It's very, very unusual.
Yeah, I can see what you
Again,
mean.
maybe they originally resisted, but 22 minutes to 11 minutes, you have to cut some stuff.
Yeah, exactly, man. They cut out a lot of like the actual character development.
Indeed.
But the war machine comes back to life, and it turns out it looks like just a giant wooden version of a generic robot, which really makes me feel like they had no idea what to do with the design. They just said, you see like
Transformers, less
not
than
even
you
like a transformer. It
expect.
looks like
do whatever you can with that.
Yeah, it looks like just a box robot, like a robot that you would draw as a kid, made of boxes with like, circular eyes, and that it literally just looks like that because they wanted to get this done as soon as possible.
Yeah, to
And-
call this a transformer is actually kind of an insult to Transformers. This looks more like a GoBot.
Or a
Yeah.
or a Chargertron, or maybe a freaking bot.
Yes, sure. But it's here where the fruitcake gag actually comes back into play as Flicker uses one to smash the lock of the cage they're in. And it's here where the rushed nature of the episode, this is where it totally lost me because at this point I was watching it, I look at the timer, and it turns out the entire climax happens in less than a minute, which is so rushed. You could feel like they just wanted to get this done and over with because they had better things for it and they couldn't do it. So it's like, why bother? So what happens is the robot is marching towards the castle as Flicker and Flame repurpose their conveyor belts to shoot fruitcake at it. And the fruitcakes basically smash into the robot, causes it to topple over into the lake. And the cockpit of the robot just randomly explodes and causes Rudolph to fly off into the distance. And the episode ends with King Allfire climbing out of the cockpit as the other knights are busy drinking tea and eating biggies, much to his annoyance. And like I said, The rest of the episode I could take or leave. It wasn't good, but it wasn't terrible either. It was just like mediocre. But it's this ending. This annoyed the hell out of me.
Yep.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's like they realize they only have one paper of script left and they have to fit everything
Rush
in.
it, but it's like it is so rushed. It's not satisfying at all. That's not an ending. That's like we ran out of ideas. Oh well, here you go. Goodbye. And it's really like they just threw their hands up and said, "I don't know."
It's like, I don't know.
Exactly.
Honestly, yeah. Even though it's rushed, I did in fact think it was pretty good, all things considered.
I can see that in a way, but I don't know. The ending is what killed the enjoyment of this episode for me. And
you can go through most of the episode with some patience to the rushing, irony there, but it's the last minute. The last minute where they throw everything into the last 30 seconds and stuff.
Yes,
Yeah, I can
exactly.
See that.
And I think that it actually starts a little bit before that even, basically from the point of the cage escape, because what happens is Flicker says, we will fight fire with fire, and by that I mean we will play dirty, and he throws one of the fruitcakes at the lock to unlock it. I'm like, what? How's that playing dirty? What am I missing here? Where's the... Did they cut a joke that would have made sense in this context that I'm missing now?
That is a very good point. I did not consider that, but yeah, no, that is very, very true. It feels like even with that, they could have had more to it, but again, the runtime just did not work. Yep. But the reason we discussed this episode is because Princess Flame would be made a background character after this episode. Because apparently, in her last couple of appearances, she did not have any lines, which is really, really just a shame because she is such a fun character.
Oh, what?
More so in the first season than this, but she definitely deserves way, way better. And really, to be honest with you, the entire franchise does as a whole because this would be the final season of Blazing Dragons because the ratings did not improve. Surprise, surprise. And it still is a cult classic, but I feel like that extends to like the first season and the game compared to the second season because I feel like if it started with the second season, no one would remember this. This would not be a remembered show by anyone. This would wind up in the same bit of like Ethereum that like half of the 90s syndicated cartoons would, with good reason. Because this was really not enjoyable at all, this episode. And the first season... Sorry,
it had its enjoyable moments, all things considered.
It did.
Yeah,
but
some jokes do land. Some
no,
jokes
it
do
does.
land.
This isn't a total waste of time, but compared to the first season, this is definitely inferior. And one thing I will say that's interesting about the franchise as a whole that I don't get, nobody has done anything with this franchise or even the concept of it since then. It's like, okay, maybe they own this version, but no one has thought up of a way they could do like a Kingdom of Dragons and being invaded by evil humans as like a kid show or a cartoon or a book or something like that. It's very unusual because
that's very much a missed opportunity. Like really subverting the script like that, and you don't do anything with it going forward. Like, come on, people! This is a freaking gold mine.
But it's not only that. It's like this is like again, it's a cult classic, but I feel like most people would not know it or they'd only remember it like in half memories from like watching it on Toon Disney or whatever network they saw it on. And again, it's a shame because I feel like this has so much potential, and especially after the first season, this had so much potential. I feel like in another universe, like where the second season was exactly like the first and it managed to find its footing and find its audience, it still would be on for like 10 seasons. I really feel like a concept like this, you had the characters like this, you had the setting, everything was right there. Everything was right there to be perfect.
Yep.
And then there was a failure to launch. That's how I really feel about it.
Yeah, like it reminds me of that one moment from freaking what was it? The Smiling Friends where like they get jumped by a witch and freaking Mike's like oh, we were right there, man.
Exactly. Yeah, no, in a way it is kind of like that. And of course, this is not the last time we will be discussing Blazing Dragons because, as Angron said earlier, we will discuss the video game sometime in the future. The interesting thing about that is, number one, it is a point-and-click video game on PlayStation of all things, which is very interesting.
It's
number
in the
two,
style of LucasArts.
Yeah, it is. It very much is like LucasArts. Number two is that it has a lot more famous voice actors in it, which is very interesting. And number three, the dragons in that are absolutely nothing like the dragons in the television show. I'm talking about their designs. Their personalities are the same. Their personalities are the same, but their designs are pretty different. And that, I mean that they are dragon tours. They're like centaur versions of dragons.
Yep, dragon
even though they're full scaly. And it's going to be very interesting when we talk about that, especially because, number one, it's going to be a whole playthrough of the game. And number two, just to see really how that concept would be covered in a different way in the video game. But yeah, as a whole with Blazing Dragons right now, it really, I could say it needs more love. The first season probably does. And the concept as a whole, it really needs like somebody just to come along and see this cartoon and be like, hey, that's not a bad idea. Let's make more of it. Or, hey, let's make something like it. Exactly.
That would be awesome.
But yeah, as it stands right now, Blazing Dragons Season 1, thumbs up. Blazing Dragons Season 2, thumbs down. And Blazing Dragons, the video game, we do not know yet.
Oh, it's good. I'm absolutely going to give it a thumbs up.
Oh, you played it?
I have not
I
played it,
played
but I have seen A Long play, and it's amazing. So
I
far.
played
It's going
it.
to be good.
I
That's
really
gonna be
wouldn't
good.
say
Context
it's as good as the first season, but it's definitely better than the second season. And it's honestly very unique in terms of design and everything.
I can, yeah, I can see that, especially again because the way they designed the dragons to be totally different in it.
Oh, hell yeah.
I can see that. So now it is time for the question of the week, which is: what other show retools do you remember, and were they for the better or for the worst? I'll get started, and my answer is probably going to be from another slightly obscure cartoon. It's one that I might have discussed earlier on in the podcast's history, but I'm not sure if it's been a while, so it'll be all right. There was a show in the mid to late 2000s called the Mr. Men Show. Basically, what it was a version of the books by Roger Hargreaves, and it was all little vignettes about the characters going about their day and things like that. You had little comedy bits, you had little, vignettes. It was a cute enough show. I feel like if it came out now, it would do better because now you actually have like social media that would latch on it. I feel like 2008 was a little ahead of its time. I feel like if it came out just a little bit later, it probably wouldn't have been as big as like Friendship is Magic, but it would have had a following. It probably would have ended up getting a fan following, but it didn't. Now for season 2 of the show, what they decided to do was number one, they dropped some of the characters from the show for no real reason. The new characters they added to the show did not really do anything. The bizarre thing they did was rather than each episode consisting of like 3 or 4 little sketches all related to a topic, like for example, the amusement park, airplanes, shopping malls, it all had a cohesive theme to it. Like it was every sketch was connected to it. And it was very, very odd. And that I feel is probably what killed the show because season 2 is a completely different feeling to season 1. They try to do the same type of comedy, but it just doesn't click. And as a whole, I just feel like what happened was I think they got a little bit too big for their britches or something like that. That they thought, oh, now that season 1's done, let's do it completely different for season 2. We can't fail. And of course, they failed. And part of that, of course, was that they were on Cartoon Network in the mid to late 2000s. So do the math. They probably wouldn't have had a chance regardless. I feel like the retooling would not have worked. So in my mind, I'm going to go with that retooling being somewhat bad because it pretty much killed what little momentum the show had. And I feel like if they had just kept it like season 1, maybe it wouldn't have done as good, but it also probably couldn't have hurt. Like I say, it's the old adage, which also goes for this episode, come to think of it. If it ain't broke, why fix it?
Yeah.
No, that's definitely gonna be my choice though. Is the Mr. Men show from season 1 to season 2 because that show kind of just crashed and burned in my opinion, and it's a shame because it didn't deserve to. It was kind of ahead of its time in a way, and it was a cute enough show. I feel like again, if it came out tomorrow, you could see it taking the internet by storm. But again, it was ahead of its time in a way. But that's gonna be my pick. The Mr. Men show, season 1 to season 2. Angron, what would you have to say is a retooling of a popular show / franchise you remember, and do you think it was a good thing?
That is going to be a pretty tricky one because I will say this. There are I mean there are a few examples I can think of, but they aren't exactly as prominent as something like say Blazing Dragons or something like that. That being said, however, there is one that is absolutely baffling to me. And that would have to hands down be freaking Lego Elves of all things. Yeah, you're gonna want to sit down for this. So apparently, starting out, Lego Elves, despite looking and basically moving like a freaking Adobe Flash animation, actually had a pretty cohesive story and had a little bit more love put into it compared to like other things, like even it's no Lego Monkey Kid, let's put it that way, but it surprised me. I was going into this expecting it to be not that great, but I actually had my fair bit of fun with it. The first season especially, because like the character was there, and not to mention like a few of the voice actors from like MLP and whatnot were in that. But then something and you know what's weird about the show? It did not lean into the whole Lego thing. Like, it was its own separate thing, and I feel it worked. Then a little later, the Lego or the company that made this show remembered, oh hey, it's a Lego thing. We're supposed to be selling Lego toys, and then it kind of leaned back into the whole Lego thing, making the characters Lego, making the setting Lego, but also telling somewhat of a more original story, if you can believe it. Like this, believe it or not, is the precursor for another Lego Elves series that's basically a sequel series, more or less, but get this was made around the time that Netflix was using the shit out of freaking Studio Mir. Like, hands down. This is the same studio that brought us Avatar, Voltron, I don't want to say the Dragon Prince, the writers from the Avatar maybe, but freaking Vox Machina? Just good lordy. And strange thing is, it did lean more into the Lego aspect, though not as heavily as the final few episodes of season 1. And then there's also the fact that despite it having the same style and animation as stuff like Avatar and whatnot, I feel it kind of leaned too heavy on the whole exaggerated faces and whatnot, and the fact that honestly, this feels like the studio's weakest show ever made. Barring the fact that it was Lego helping fund the whole thing, it kind of felt a little weak. Not to say there wasn't any good moments, but yeah, especially with stuff like Nicole Oliver making a freaking doing a vocal role of one of the characters, which surprised me a lot. But
right there.
Oh hell yeah, absolute legend. But yeah, as for the second season, it honestly kind of felt a little off compared to the first season. Like, not too bad, especially when you compare it to freaking Blazing Dragons. But yeah, it's not really. It's good for it's good for a single viewing, but it's not going to be a very comfortable single sitting. It's still got very good story, very good characters, and it very much surprised me that it kept the whole thing that the first season did going, despite the fact that they freaking got a character that I did not like, but. Otherwise, yeah, that's pretty much going to be my thing for that.
Yeah, that's a good choice right there. And again, like you say, most of the times with retools, it's like the executives, the creators, not knowing what to do with it, and they think that what they know is better.
Yeah, though I feel here it's less that and more just, oh hey, we got a fancy new thing. Hey Netflix, mind if we use your fancy used thing for our thing? And it's like, okay. And they made a cool thing, but it also kind of went a little off the rails a little bit.
Yeah,
got back on, and it still made for a very entertaining story and whatnot, but yeah.
No, I hear you. That definitely makes a lot of sense. So, Stryker, what would you have to say? Any retoolings that you know, and do you think it was a good thing or a bad thing?
The only one I can think of is The Amazing World of Gumball.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Where the main thing I really enjoyed about the retooling was the art style change.
Yeah, it went from being too thin and angular and whatnot, and a little more fluid, to being a little less fluid, but sacrificing that for more story and a little more of a cinematic look. If you catch my drift.
But for me, I just it felt like it went a little too dark into a bit of a. It went it went a bit too dark, in my opinion, because like all I can think is this is a cartoon for kids. They don't need to go too deep.
They don't need to go full meta. God damn it.
True. Yeah.
But they did, and I'm glad they did, honestly, because we basically got the Cartoon Network equivalent of South Park, more or less.
In a way.
True.
Yeah, I can kind of. Yeah, I can kind of see it in a way.
There's a few things that I did enjoy about the newer seasons, but the story just hit me the wrong way, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I get you. I kind of feel the same way. I feel like my favorite season of Gumball probably was the first couple of ones because it had more of a whimsical tone to it. Which again, nothing wrong with getting darker, but I feel like
it still had the whimsy, but it paired it well with the meta. But then it kind of decided to get a little too meta later on, which I understand, but it doesn't really detract from anything too much, you know?
Yep. No, I understand. I definitely hear you.
Yeah,
but,
I just didn't enjoy it as much.
Yeah. What rubbed me the wrong way on the later seasons is the fact that they ditched the classic eye design for the more rounded eye design, which normally that stuff was reserved for the more surprised or shocked sort of things, but then it just became a full-on thing, which kind of made it a little weird, but I mean, I got used to it eventually.
Yeah, I can kind of see where you're coming from with that, but no, that's a good choice right there. You know, definitely one that is probably more well remembered than the other two, and with good reason. So, Math, what would you have to say is a retooling that you remember and was a good thing or a bad thing?
The most jarring for me when it happened was American Dragon Jake Long.
Yes.
Oh yes.
Yes.
I see you people watch Disney too.
I cannot believe I forgot that.
Yeah, I remember this.
I remember.
What happened?
So many things to say about the retooling of this one.
Oh fuck yeah, me too.
For those who aren't aware, is that there was a change in directors from season 1 to 2. They brought in Steve Lauder, who was the director of Kim Possible, to do the second season, and Lauder notoriously hated the designs and animation style for season 1. I don't get why, but he basically said, "Okay, if I'm coming in, we're retooling the whole damn thing.
Make it look more like Kim Possible. What the fuck, man?"
Yeah, no, the redesign, I did not like that.
I mean,
he then went on to direct Kim Possible 4, season 4. So actually, he was focused on that and just a producer on this. And they brought in someone else again to do season 2, but his redesigns were the ones that stuck.
Yeah, I mean, okay. On the one,
style looks great in Kim Possible because it was made for Kim Possible. It was not made for this, and it looks so jarring in this.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. But on the one hand, I do. Okay, the one thing I will say about the new designs here is that even though the mouth things are a little more same, and it took on a more mature sort of role here, not to mention Jake Long looks like an actual long dragon for the most part. But on the other, come on, man. You really had to sacrifice season 1 Jake Long and other designs just to have a freaking Merfish principal that was pretty much a spy, and good lord, man. Like, I absolutely like what they did with the I still like what they did with the final season, but I'm sorry. Just the designs had to suffer because of it. It looks too angular. You pretty much basically had those ending things with that pretty much every Disney Channel show was doing at the end for the most part. Yeah, it didn't sit right with me.
Again, my biggest issue is his animation style does look good. I love Kim Possible. Kim Possible was made from the ground up using that style. This is a show that has been reworked to somehow squeeze the square peg of his style into the round hole of the show.
Yeah.
It don't
Yeah,
work.
maybe it could have worked if that's how the show started, but no, we already had a different design before, and
Yeah,
they changed
and
it.
that design worked way better. It had very unique designs, differences, everything. Here, I mean, to be fair, this one did have unique differences, especially with the Delphi twins and, again, Jake Long and a bunch of other dragons. But it still looked so simplistic. Good lordy.
My problem is that the show is titled American Dragon. And of course, in season 1, he had a Western dragon design.
Yes.
In season 2, they gave him an Eastern design.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's like,
I know, right?
it's the
I
wrong
don't
time to
mind
do
that, but it looks so fucking simple.
Like,
It
I absolutely
doesn't
understand.
work.
I absolutely understand why they made him an Eastern dragon, because he is of Chinese descent. That I get.
Yeah.
You had to do that from the beginning. Otherwise, if you make him a Western dragon in the beginning, you have to keep him a Western dragon, because going from a Western dragon to an Eastern dragon is so off-putting visually.
It's
It is.
jarring.
It just doesn't work even with the title too.
Yes, that is exactly right. I mean, that was one. I'm shocked I didn't think of that, because that was one
I
that
think it's because
definitely
most people intentionally tried to forget season 2 from a design perspective anyway. The story was still good, but from visuals and design, that seems to be very often forgotten. And whenever people think of American Dragon, they just remember season 1.
with good reason. Yep. But no, that's a great choice right there. So Stark, what would you have to say is a retooling that you remember and was a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, there was this French cartoon that was about aliens that crashed on Earth and they have to hide in an abandoned house. It was called Space Goofs, and it had 2 seasons, and there was a really big change between the 2 seasons. Not only the art style, but in the first season there were 5 aliens, and in the second season they got rid of one of them. They were only 4.
Yeah, honestly, that kind of sounds like the plot to 3 Below from Netflix.
Oh, I know
Not gonna lie.
I know this one. In America, it's called Stupid Invaders.
No, that was the title of the video game.
Yeah, it had a video game, and there's actually an episode that's called Stupid Invaders, but it has nothing to do with the actual game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but well, like I said, season 2 changed the art style, and they got rid of a character that. Yep, and there's no explanation. Like he does return in some episodes, and they act like he's a completely new character. So it's an alternative timeline. I don't know, but
wow, that is weird.
Like, yeah, it's really weird. Like the first episode of season 2 doesn't mention him. They don't say if he escaped, and then it turns out that he was Recton. Now they never met him before.
That is an incredibly strange change right there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, do they have like completely new writers or something? Because that's the only reason I can justify for that happening.
I'm not sure. No, because apparently the same director remained, but apparently he thought that the character was too weak. Like he only had like one joke, and I can kind of see it because this character,
you can only do so much with a 2-headed alien.
Yeah, it was a 2-headed alien, and the whole shtick is that the heads will argue all the time. So I guess the writers got tired of that joke, and rather than make something else with him, they just decided to get rid of him.
Wow, that is really, really weird. That is extremely strange. You know, that is probably going to be one of the weirdest retoolings I've ever had, because getting rid of a character, I understand. But getting rid of him, not explaining it, and then having him show back up, but the other ones don't know him, I can imagine for those that watched the first season had to be incredibly confused.
Yep.
It's understandable, to be honest.
Definitely.
It's like a completely different show.
Oh hell yeah!
The 2 seasons might as well happen on different timelines.
I can hear that. Yeah, that is so bizarre. Wow.
But yeah, Space Goofs is my answer for this.
That's good. Jordan, what about you? Do you know any shows that had a retooling that was noticeable, and was it a good thing or a bad thing?
Oh, I want to say Ninjago, Lego's Ninjago, I guess. I mean, I remember watching some of the series. There were some. I guess I don't honestly know. I watched a lot of cartoons in my day, and I didn't care like, oh, what happened to change? Maybe like Ben 10, how it went to this awesome, cool action TV show to the younger, like more different style Ben 10. I'm like, wait a minute, we went from this cool action series to this Ben 10.
Yeah,
Like,
it went from Ben 10 to Alien Force to its sequel series Ultimate Alien, and then Omniverse, and then to the reboot.
And we'll be
yeah, the
talking about the
reboot.
franchise.
Hey.
Yeah, how it was just different. I'm like, okay, so we went from Ben 10, this cool action scene, to the other ones that you all said. Then Cartoon Network brought out this Teen Titan ripoff. I'm like, okay, what am I looking at? We had cool cartoons that went from like awesome action scenes to this kid-friendly goofiness. I'm like, okay, I'm done.
I mean,
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I like how they brought some new aliens for Ben and the Teen Titans, but I'm like, okay, you're making it too friendly. You're not making it what it used to be when I like cartoons. You're making it like, okay, because people don't like how violent cartoons were from all the old times. I'm like, but that makes it more fun. You have violent stuff, a little bit of comedy, but you add too much comedy and the goofiness. You're literally taking out the good stuff and just making these characters more like babies for kids who are never ever gonna watch these because they're like, oh, we're gonna be on our tablets. Kids are missing the best part here.
Devil's advocate a little. Sorry, continue.
No, you're good.
Okay, yeah, devil's advocate. I mean, to be fair, the original Ben 10 absolutely had some action moments, but at its core, it was still a more or less kids show grounded at young viewers. It had very much a lot of action scenes, yes, but it still very much had like that youthful charm to it.
Yeah, but unlike the reboots or the fourth series and beyond, it was done in a relatively realistic looking style, and they kept a nice balance of it. Whereas in the series that she's talking about, they went with this thick, heavy black line style. They really emphasized the toony nature of the designs, and they leaned way more into the comedy than even the first series did.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
and I know for the fact that there were a lot of scenes that they didn't add in the originals, like a lot of cool dark stuff that their grandpa had for being a plumber and other more stuff they had. I mean, with the new ones, they kind of add more stuff to it, but the new one, I'm like, you just made it more kid friendly for you're selling product and merchandise. Kids aren't gonna pay attention for stuff like that.
I think that the ultimate issue was that the Ben 10 audience had grown up with Ben 10, basically from the first series all the way to the Ultimatrix and all those. So they were trying to recapture a young audience, a new generation of audience. So they went back to the comedy route, and they overly emphasized that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And seeing how they did that with Teen Titans, they made Teen Titans Go. Same thing. They just took out a little bit of the seriousness and just shoved a bunch of comedy and goofiness for the younger audience, which some kids can get it, some don't, because they're like, oh, it's just too dumb and dorky or whatever, and they'll go on their tablets or whatever, not pay attention and watch, other things. I'm like, you kids will never understand the true glory of what cartoon was. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair. But interesting thing on that, the best part, interestingly, of Teen Titans Go are the Doom Patrol specials, because Doom Patrol as a whole is weird, unintentional rhyme aside. So if it was just a Doom Patrol series, it's honestly what made Unikitty so well. It's kind of its bread and butter. It's comedy. That's what it's supposed to be. If it was just Doom Patrol and if it's doing the same thing, I would honestly be on board with that. But since it's basically just Teen Titans, but that, it's kind of a little less unforgivable.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I kind of see where you're going with that.
Yeah, so that's my opinion.
Yes, I can see that.
Okay. So, no, that's a very, very good choice right there. LuckyEevee, what would you have to say is your a retool of a show that you remember, and was it a good thing or a bad thing?
Journeys.
Go ahead.
Retooling Pokemon into essentially a globetrotting adventure.
Yeah. I honestly thought you were going to bring up Pokemon Gen 7, like, design-wise, because we went from the first...
it's still, like, following the plot of the games.
That's fair.
Whereas you only had a 4-part arc dedicated to the final part of the Sword and Shield story.
That's fair. Yeah, I feel ya. Yeah.
I haven't gone to Horizons yet, so I can't speak on that.
Yeah.
It's all good.
But yeah, definitely Journeys. I really like Journeys.
Journeys is awesome. It really did. It really changed the formula up for the better.
So it's good to end all of that, negativity or ambivalentism about reboots with one that actually turned out to be pretty good.
Less ambivalence with more like confusion on mine, but I get what you mean.
Yep. No, it's all good. It's okay. Well, now it is time for the patent pending Dragoness Scale, where we rank the Dragoness. And it's here we're going to talk about Princess Flame, but specifically the Season 2 version of her. And this is going to be interesting because, as I said earlier, we all have varying opinions on her. And again, her design is one of the better ones, which isn't saying much, but it is still pretty good. The hair being visible, I don't know how to feel about it. I think what kind of hurts it for me is the color of it. It looks so washed out and faded. Same with her scales.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the copy we saw. Maybe there's a more pristine version out there. Who knows? But as it stands, I might have to give the Season 2 version of Princess Flame a 6 out of 10, which is a pretty far cry from the perfect score she got for me for Season 1, which kind of shows, again, she didn't really have anything to do, and this was the most that she had to do all season because after this she became a background character. And it's also the design. It just feels like again, they fixed what wasn't broken. There was a way you could have it and have her look like this while still not tweaking it so much to where it's a little off-putting. Now, with that being said, she's still a great character. The design isn't too off-putting, and she's one of the better designed ones, at least the ones that were changed notably from Season 1 to Season 2. And, but I really have to dock her a lot of points because what they did with her character, or lack thereof in this episode, and just the designs in general. I got to go with a 6 out of 10 on that one. Angron, what would you give her?
Okay. So what honestly kind of kills it for me, not really that stuff, though I do understand what you mean by that. It's honestly the hair. Like, not really the color, though the color does kind of make her look like she's mac and cheese colored, which, okay. It's also the cut of hair that she has, the style of it. I'm not a fan of, like, flat cut, sort of like bookworm looking things, which, to be fair, it does kind of help accent her character more or less. But I'm sorry, the hair just kills it for me. As for her role and her overall design, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, upon seeing it a second time, I will admit despite the first design still being good, though nothing will really top the game. We'll get to that later. But here, the design's pretty good. It's a little more rounded, which, it kind of works, and it's kind of a precursor to the game if you think about it. Again, more on that later. But yeah, I'm kind of gonna have to I'm kind of gonna have to give the same score, 6 out of 10. Her character's still there, but the design kind of takes a nose to. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna do a 7 out of 10 to be a little generous. It's not as bad as I would think, but it's not really gonna have me be like, oh hey, mad props. Also, the fact that the overall show reminds me of freaking 101 Dalmatians, the 90s show.
It does in a
Yeah.
way. That's actually a good point. I didn't think of that before now, but yeah.
Yeah, probably why I won't see the series, but
It's all good. It's all good. So, Stryker, what would you have to give her?
I adore this design for Flame. This is actually my favorite design for her. Like, period, for me. However, her role in this episode, oh man. If
oh
only
dear.
they had the writing of the first season.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Therefore, I would have given her a perfect score, but the writing really brought down my score, so I'm giving it a 9.
Wow.
Oh, well,
That's
still
a pretty
high.
good one. And like I said, it's interesting, I think, when the scores fluctuate like this more than when they're uniform, because get a good overall thing of appearance of opinions there. And I kind of see where you're coming from, especially with why you like her so much, because she's still the same character, and I can tell if you like the art style change compared to season 1, then I definitely can see this appealing. So
Yep.
yep, that does make a lot of sense.
I mean, I'm a bit down for this design, to be honest.
No
Yeah,
problem.
I can see
No problem.
why.
We all have that. No problem at all.
Yeah,
So,
I'm a little
Shark?
down for everything except the hair.
Yep, it's all good. So, Math, what would you have to say?
So apparently I'm keeping the score fluctuation going. I'm
Oh,
going
boy.
with an 8 for this one.
Well then.
The
Whoa,
original
all right.
version I gave a 9 because I liked everything about her except the snout. I found the snout to be too long for the face, and just something about that threw me off. This one actually fixes basically every design issue I would have had with the character. She seems more proportioned, facially speaking. I think the hair's cute. I like the outfit and the styling of it. I do agree with the color saturation thing. Somehow they make it work with this character specifically. I don't know what. I can't quite explain it. It looks like it fits her somehow. The issue is they basically removed all of her character. She has no personality. She just exists. I said earlier, she has 5 fucking lines in this, and
Yep.
it shows. You can still see the core of the character from season 1 there, but it is so stripped, it hurts.
Yeah, you can feel that she's still there, but
she's still there.
But no, I get what you're coming from.
Yeah, well, I think it's a visual improvement, and again, I'm saying that purely as a me thing. I'm not saying that as a consistent. Like, your mileage will absolutely vary whether you prefer this design or the old design. Her personality is absolutely a downgrade. There is no walking around that.
Yeah, that's definitely. Yeah, a
Absolutely.
lot of it feels like a downgrade compared to the first season.
Yeah,
Let's be fair.
Definitely. Yep, we've definitely got that. So, all right. So now, Shark, what would you give Princess Flame, specifically the season 2 version?
Well, at the end, I decided that I actually like both designs the same. Like, each has their own strength and stuff.
That's fair.
So looks alone aren't gonna affect her score a lot. However, her character and role in the episode, oh boy. Yeah,
Yep.
remember what I said? That in the last time we talked about her, not only was she capable of being more than a damsel in distress, but she was good at it. She was really capable of stuff. This time she's just that, damsel in distress, like, and eventually became a background character, as you say, so yeah, her looks are fine, but her character really really got downgraded, and I'm gonna have to give her a 7 out of 10 this time.
Yeah,
Okay.
it really did hurt.
I can see that. Yep. So, Jordan, what would you give Princess Flame, specifically the season 2 version?
I guess the same way everyone else is gonna go with. I've never watched these series because it looks weird to me, but I like the Princess Ember with her first season. Like, she had a cool attitude and her design was cool. Second, in 5.
5? All right. It's all good. It's all good. Any particular reason or?
It's just how I'm hearing everyone else saying that she doesn't look like what she used to be in the season 1. Don't give her enough lines. Her design's different, and I'm gonna agree with that. If they were to turn somebody who was in season 1 a cool character into what now, then I'm just gonna agree with everybody that what number they have on her or what they think is best for her.
Yep. Okay. So 5 out of 10 it is. And LuckyEevee, what would you have to give her?
I guess 5 out of 10 too.
All right.
The design's alright.
All right. Well, that's like I say, probably one of the more interesting Dragoness scales we've had on the ranking in a while. So, if you have any questions, or if you want to suggest what you would have done to make this episode 22 minutes, you can email us.
Did Evie get?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Evie said 5. Yeah.
Oh, okay, never mind.
But yeah, if you have any questions, or if you want to suggest how this episode would be better if it was 22 minutes long instead of 11 minutes, you can email us at fiorydiscourse@outlook.com. Visit us on Twitter at twitter.com/fiorydiscourse. And subscribe and like to our YouTube page, which is also in the description. Next time, we'll be discussing the 2022 We Baby Bears episode, Dragon Pests. That'll be a very interesting change from all the 90s cartoons we've been doing for the past few weeks. So, yep, that'll be interesting to talk about one of the newer Cartoon Network series and see how that holds up. And that'll be next week's. Until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and take care.
Later.
Adios.
Later.
See you next week.